Hello, happy Thursday. It's Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. No, I am not running downstairs to get bourbon at the last minute. No, I also do not have bourbon. Mark just asked me; he's a little concerned, but I'm abstaining from bourbon tonight due to some slight medical stuff. But we'll be back on the train at some point here. But very excited for today's show. We have a fun sequence. 6 races. You got to get all 6 right. Well, I think you get paid 5 out of the 6 too. But hopefully you get all 6 right. 15% takeout, $1 minimum bet. It's a nice little pick 6 over two very fun tracks in Keeneland and Santa Anita. As usual, my interest in horse racing is starting to peak again with Breeders' Cup coming up and Keeneland. I always get excited for the start of all these Keeneland meets, even though I'm absolutely awful at them. And then usually by the second or third day, I'm over it. Speaking of being over it, Mark, how are you doing today?
What am I over now? I mean,
Well, I couldn't go to our guest after saying that, and so I had
you couldn't. You set yourself up, and then I mean, it wasn't a great setup for yourself. You got to be better than that, Josh. But I mean, it's. I thought this was a really interesting wager. I kind of recommended we cover this sequence because I think people are going to be focusing on Keeneland. Obviously, Keeneland opening back up. It's one of probably the most. I don't know, the most prestigious circuit running right now in the country. And then you have some really good racing at Santa Anita with 3 Breeders' Cup winning your ins. So they paired the 6 total Breeders' Cup winning your ins on Saturday into a 2-track 15% takeout pick 6. So low takeout wagers are something we as handicappers should be supporting. So let's support them.
I do love, and I do have to bash Santa Anita a little bit because we're gonna give them a little sandwich, right? So we compliment them up front. Now here's the criticism: how about them doing a turf pick 3 just like Keeneland, but they forgot to lower the takeout?
How about the part that they ran a turf pick 3 and then forgot that all 3 of the turf pick 3 races were supposed to be on the turf? That was also that was a minor detail last week.
Oh man, I think it's like some ungodly 24% takeout, but we're not going to get all ITP on here and talk takeout. So instead, we are going to bring in a very good friend of ours, Matthew DeSantis. Matthew, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, fellas. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back on. And I know there was a lot of flack this summer about me not wearing the cap, me not wearing the vest. And I thought for this in particular, I had to bust the vest back out just to look like I used to. And maybe it's the inverse of normally when people, oh, Matthew's going to get big time or something like that, start dressing up. I actually started dressing down. So the inverse actually kind of happened. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I can get my own merch line next.
Yeah, you really on your streams, you've kind of really broken that out, like dad goes to soccer practice vibe going on. You got kind of the polos and the chinos and I mean, it's a good look. It's a good look.
I did laugh a little bit because I was reminded. I think you were in? Did you go to Gulfstream earlier this year? Is it Gulfstream or Tampa?
I did. I went there for the Florida Derby. Yeah.
And you took a picture of yourself, and you weren't wearing the hat, and I was oh my God, you have hair.
Yeah, I got a full head of hair. It's right there. I just got it the other day, but yeah, no, I did that. I mean, very hilariously, Chuck Simon thought that I had like a horseshoe, bald spot, like Jeff Van Gundy or something like that. And he went nuts when he realized I had hair. He's like, "Why do you wear a hat?" I'm like, "Well, it's to contain the hair more than to do any, so." But fashion aside, I'm excited to talk about this sequence because one of I think the really fun things is this summer. Obviously, I was focused almost entirely on Saratoga, but with the transition of the Belmont at the Big A, we have some great races this Saturday. But it's also a really cool part of my job at Naira Bets is focusing on tracks across the country. It's not just about the Naira tracks. I mean, people who follow me on Twitter know that I was down at Parks last a couple weeks ago for the Pennsylvania Derby, and I hope to be on the Derby Trail next year at Keeneland and down in Tampa and Gulfstream and Oaklawn. So we very much so want to support people betting and playing horses at all the different tracks, and whether it's on Naira or not. So I'm excited to talk about this Keeneland Santa Anita sequence. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought that this was a very interesting sequence. And unlike most stakes heavy sequences, I don't think I necessarily landed on the favorite or top choice. I mean, I think that there are a lot of short prices in here that have very, very good shots, but I thought there were a couple of other ways you could go in a couple places here, or like I said, if you play kind of an AB type sequence, I think there's some very interesting B type horses in here that maybe we get one of them home. We spike a little bit of a price here. But we got 6 races to cover, and we are notorious for taking way too long on these races. And I think the person who normally speeds us through, Mr. Caleb, I don't know what he's doing. He's been having like 14, 16-hour days since he's been up at Boston at MIT. I don't know if all of those if he's including social in with that. I kind of think he is, to make it sound like he's busier than he is. Yeah. But he's living his life out there. So I think we're going to hear from him this weekend. We'll have him post up a short little video. But let's go ahead and take a look here. So the sequence starts at race 7 here at Keeneland. We're going 6 furlongs on the dirt. This is the TCA, the Thoroughbred Club of America Stakes, Grade 2, and you got two horses that were both very shortish prices last time out at Churchill Downs in the Open Mind. Wicked Halo here at 5-2, and then you also have Ugiri, who is the 6 horse here at 2-1, who's your morning line favorite. And I think it kind of starts and stops with what you thought of that last race. And I went ahead and I went back. I looked through the race again. And maybe I'm making up an excuse that doesn't exist there for Wicked Halo, but it just looked like she was never comfortable in that race. You kind of watch, if you go back through her PPs, she tends to be more forward. She tends to be a length and a half off. She found herself 3 lengths off and kind of stuck in between horses, and just never look comfortable. And then I think by the end, Tyler asked a little bit, realized he wasn't going to get anything, and kind of, basically saved the horse, I think, there at the end. So, that I think kind of makes up for the huge margin of victory. So I think I'm going back to the Wicked Halo well here. I took a look at this race on optics, and it just really looked like this is going to set up here for Wicked Halo. She's a nice big square here right in the middle of the plot. You got some pace here with the 4, 5, and 2, and even the 6 here showing a little bit of pace. So I do think that Wicked Halo, as long as Tyler can keep her forward, is going to really be in here with a big shot. And I prefer her over the favorite here, the 6 Ugiri. Matt, how did you kind of see this?
Yeah, I saw in much the same way. Wicked Halo I have as my top choice. I am willing to, give a mulligan to a horse that has been a model of consistency, really, over the last, 16 months or so. And even when she doesn't win, she turns in a really honest effort every single time. And that last race just looks so anomalous. And I think you're right about Tyler saving her. And I think that you speak to that with, Asmussen bringing her back on 3 weeks rest and, pretty quickly wheeling her back around after that poor effort. So, she's run well at Keeneland before. You mentioned the pace scenario. I think it sets up well. The other thing I'm going to mention, and it's going to be a little bit of a recurring trend, particularly for these Keeneland races. And Mark, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I really do not like using horses coming out of Kentucky Downs. And interestingly enough, there are 3 horses in this race coming out of Kentucky Downs. I've seen way too many horses coming out of Kentucky Downs that have then come up and run here at New York, and they've turned in 0 efforts. And that course is notorious for taking the starch out of a horse a little bit and taxing muscles and tendons that horses are not used to using because of the undulating course. I think, Ed DeRosa shared the stat last year that horses that prepped or ran 2 back at Kentucky Downs were 0 for 53 at the Breeders' Cup. I just don't like that Kentucky Downs form coming into Keeneland. And interestingly enough, there are 3 horses in this race that are exiting Kentucky Downs, despite it being a dirt race. You have several horses like Last Leaf and others who switch surfaces. And who I think might be a little bit interesting at different prices, but I was just really turned off by that Kentucky Downs form. That might just be a personal bias that I have, but Mark, interested in how you saw this one.
Yeah, I had a sort of a contradictory stat. I know, and I don't know the numbers. I'd have to do a little deep dive and pull some research. But there was a statistic that last out Kentucky Downs runners who ran it, and I think this was last year or maybe it was 2 years back, that ran back at either Aqueduct or Keeneland, were hitting it some absurd percentage, and it was something like they were hitting it like 20% with like a $6 ROI. So there was a period of time where if it was a Kentucky Downs last out winner, you just had to include the horse for the kind of, you're talking about, that horse is a very unique course. It's a very European styled course, but there's also the factor of, does that put a little condition into certain horses and maybe they take a step forward their next out? Now, I would say some of these turnbacks you've seen at Naira are horses that ran pretty poorly. And I would also say that some of those are relatively quick turnbacks for what is a normal form cycle. So I wonder what you'll see over the next week or two as the Keeneland meet starts going, and you're going to see more of these. I did not land on a Kentucky Downs, horse in this race, and I think, I know we've joked in the past about Keeneland morning lines being not the best, and I think that's a situation in here. I think Yogiri probably takes a ton of money in here, but I'm kind of against her. When I look at her form, she seems the type of horse that, first thing, she doesn't very often. She's only once in her career strung back-to-back wins together, and those were both across the sloppy track. And, so she seems like she has a big effort and then she sort of requires a race to recover. The other thing is, if you look at her form when she wins, she almost does it every time on the engine. She's first at every single call, with the exception of that last out race. I guess she did show that she can pass other horses, but I still think she really wants to be on the front end, and there's a ton of speed drawn on the inside of her. I think both Fire on Time and Happy Soul are both arguably faster than her early, and they're both drawn inside. So I think they're going to make it pretty tough on her to get on top and to get any semblance of comfort here. I think she's obviously extremely talented. She's a horse that would make a ton of sense in here. I just think there's other ways to go that are much more interesting. I know Josh already mentioned Wicked Halo. I think Wicked Halo is one of those others. Does seem like maybe Tyler is saving a little bit, and second off the long layoff is a pretty good move for Asmussen. So she should be primed and ready to go here. But the other horse I thought was very interesting is the 2-horse Fire on Time for Dale Romans. One of those horses. One thing I do love at Keeneland is horses that have a win across the surface. She does have a win, albeit it was going 7 furlongs, but she handles the going here. And she's a horse that, albeit her last 2 efforts were not winning ones, they fit, at least on time form, on the figures that I'm looking at, they fit right there with a Yogiri or somebody like Wicked Halo. And, and there's an argument to be made that if this track comes up very speed favoring, which Keeneland often does, she's your inside draw on speed. She's going to make the lead and somebody's got to come pass her.
Oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention to Mark's point about speed drawing inside of Yogiri, who I'm also against here. Happy Soul is getting blinkers added as well. So you think that that's only going to accentuate the early speed that you're going to see from that horse and make it all the more difficult for Yogiri to have that. Not going to get an easy lead, I don't think, in this particular instance. So, it's interesting. I like that 2-horse underneath quite a bit. I think that's a horse that, if you like Wicked Halo up top, I think using the 2 in exactas, trifectas makes a ton of sense. The horse is a little bit off on buyer figures, but if you look just at the form, she does make sense underneath, I think. And she also ran a much better speed figure coming off the bench than she did before going to the bench. And I always like to see that sort of progression, because usually it means there's another step progression after that. So I think second off for Dale Romans makes a lot of sense there. So that's one I definitely like underneath.
Hey,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had kind of a question for Matt, because I know Matt was talking about this Kentucky Downs last out winners, and one of those is Happy Soul, who you brought up. I really struggled with her. I wanted to kind of like her because she's getting back to the only surface that she actually has wins on. She's 0-for-5 across turf. I don't know what those 5 turf tries were. And there was a point in time, end of 2021, beginning of 2022, where she was in really good form. She ripped off 3 in a row, put up some really nice figures. Seemed to be that they really had her figured out, and she was a really good horse. And is it just she's a little over this racing thing at this point in her career? She seems to just kind of settle for the minor awards. She seems like such a wise guy special here. Wes Ward at Keeneland with a horse, in a dirt sprint. Like it just feels like the kind of wise guy type. Johnny V getting back up, or Sticks. I just didn't know what to do with her though.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even Kentucky Downs angle notwithstanding, I was kind of stumped on this one too, because I thought, if she shows the same sort of speed going back to the dirt, you're right. Like she would have to really recapture a form from quite a while ago, I think, to win this race. And usually you don't see just that simple one-to-one transition from a speed figure standpoint on turf to dirt. There's usually a drop off or maybe a bump up. But it was hard to think that there was a bump up in this case going against this level of competition, which she has, typically struggled with before. And yeah, she just feels like a horse maybe to use underneath. I mean, and you're right, but the issue is you're not going to get 8-1 on her, because I agree with you. She's going to get bet down because of the connections. I mean, Johnny, I was just looking at a stat per different race earlier today, and there was a maiden race where Johnny V and Wesley Ward are winning 50% of their 2-year-old races at Keeneland. And it's like, well, I'll just throw all my money at that. And so, it's heads are, flipping a coin and you basically get a win. So, that one's not, I doubt it's going to be 8-1. So I don't know how much value you're really going to be able to add underneath by including that one on your ticket.
Yeah. I know you guys were, we've talked about Kentucky Downs a lot. I have one horse written down as a B, and that was the 4 horse here, Static Fire. And, to your point, Matthew, did run last time out at Kentucky Downs, won going wire to wire, and won pretty comfortably, in a turf sprint, winning by a length and 3/4 is a pretty convincing win. And what I really liked about this horse is has a win over the surface. I think over the same trip, going 6 furlongs here at Keeneland on the dirt. So I kind of like them running this horse back. Coming back here onto the dirt. And if you do look on the optics plot, plots out to be your likely leader. So I think if you don't have, if you put this in early, right? Maybe you don't get a chance to watch the races or something. I mean, Keeneland does have a propensity sometimes to just become, speed favoring, and maybe this is a horse that just gets out on the front end and just goes. So I kind of have Static Fire here as this is only we'll say a 2 cherry horse here. We won't give it the 3rd cherry because it's only an E5. But I think this is your likely leader here. Has won wire to wire. Has got a win over the trip here. On Brisnet, looks a little slow. I don't know how it looks on the other figures, but speed sometimes can help overcome all there. So.
Now that last effort, I think over the Kentucky Downs turf got a 90 buyer. So, I mean, that fits very much so in this spot if it's able to translate. And, the interesting thing about her is, I mean, she was coming off a significant layoff and ran that big effort at Kentucky Downs. And, going back to what I was talking with Mark about with regards to the number 2 horse, same sort of thing. You'd expect even more improvement second time off the bench after that long of a layoff in particular. So, I think that was one I definitely took a look at. I was a little, wary of the Kentucky Downs angle. And that's something, Mark, to your point, I'm really going to use this opening weekend to evaluate that angle, because I think you're right. It was 2 years ago where it was like Kentucky Downs shippers could literally not lose a race. Like they were winning everything. And then last year it was just poison. And so it can be a little hit or miss. And that's going to be, I think, a really fun angle to just track throughout the weekend. And then be able to adjust some of your expectations and handicapping the following week to go, okay, I got to take this a lot more seriously, or okay, I am going to be fading these, horses shipping in from different tracks, whether it's Kentucky Downs, Ellis, Churchill, what have you.
Yeah, I've been paying attention. I've been playing a lot of turf ducked because I absolutely love the turf duck meet. It's like one of my favorite times a year. But and I've been watching the same thing. These Kentucky Down shippers coming in and really not running a step. There's been a few of them. I have sort of was interested in a bunch of them from the same angles. Does that if they come back and they run really well, then you kind of move them up at Keeneland as well, right? You can sort of translate that form to other circuits. And they haven't run well so far. But again, I don't know if it's a quick turn back, if it's the quality of the runners. The sample size is kind of small, so I'll be doing the same thing. Very much paying attention this weekend, and after this weekend, I'll make some more concrete decisions on how I handle those horses going forward.
Isn't this turf of Aqueduct?
They're running on turf at Aqueduct. That's
Aqueduct.
It. No, Josh.
BAQ.
By the way, I am thrilled that we are actually running on the turf because the Noble Damsel, if that race gets rescheduled one more time, I don't even know what we're going to do.
You think they're going to be running on Saturday?
I
do not. I do not.
I don't know. They're going to run. They have to run the Hirsch on the turf. I mean, if they. Or that's going to be a logistical nightmare. Why do you bring this up? We're having a good time. We're having a nice conversation. This was nice, casual night. And Mark's just like, by the way, your weather's going to be shit.
Yeah. Real quick before we move on, we do have Charles asking about Last Leaf. That one was one that you kind of tossed based off the Kentucky Downs angle there.
Yeah, I do like the horse. I mean, Last Leaf's, I thought a very nice horse. You look at that race, a couple of races back. The problem with Last Leaf is you go back and you go, when were their last wins? Really, it's been, since summer of 2022. And ever since she left the Spats barn, she's really not been the same horse, not in terms of speed figures, but just in terms of being able to win. Now, some of that is she's been stepping up in class a little bit more, running in grade 2s, grade 3s, higher level listed stakes races, and probably against a little bit better competition. And she just continues to finish underneath a lot. And so at 9-2, I wasn't thrilled. Eddie Keneally and Louis Saez are trusted connections at Keeneland for sure. So, it definitely is something to take into consideration. But I was going to look elsewhere to try to find a little bit more value.
Yeah, apparently, Mark, you are now Archie Bunker and Fred Sanford rolled into one. So congrats on that.
I have no comeback for that. I can't argue with that.
For our younger audience, they might not know who that is, but obviously our uncle, our good uncle here, Mr. Uncle Sully, he brings out the references here. But let's move on here. Race 9, mile and 16th, Breeders Futurity here. 2-year-olds. We got a couple 2-year-old stakes in the sequence, which I'm really sad that Caleb's not here because I know that those are his favorite races to handicap. Matthew, where did you kind of land here? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, this is a really interesting race, I think. And, obviously you have locked to the far outside and threw up a huge, and I don't know what Brisnet looks like or what Optic Spot looks like, threw up a huge buyer speed figure the last time out, 96, which, kind of overwhelms the field. The far outside post, I think I'm going to try to beat this horse. That might seem foolish, but I'm going to try to get past locked here. Now, I say that. I'm going to try to get past locked by going to the second choice, and I'm going to go to number 3, Awesome Road. And, one of the things that, I've dug into the numbers at Keeneland, and listen, you don't really even have to dig into the numbers at Keeneland to know this, which is Brad Cox's horse has improved dramatically second off, in second starts. He's winning 31% of second starts over the last 5 years, which is ridiculous. And he, has these horses consistently move forward. I think this horse makes a lot of sense. Showed, doesn't need to necessarily be on the lead, but is by far and away, I think, the best speed in this race. And this is one where I feel like, there's a race this, weekend at Aqueduct or BAQ or whatever you want to call it, Belmont at the Big A. In the Champagne, that kind of reminds me of the same thing with Fierceness, as a horse that I think is just faster than everybody else. And I think Awesome Road's kind of just faster than everybody else. You get Flavian aboard. That's kind of where I'm going to go. It's interesting that Giroux stays on Timberlake, and that's a horse that had legitimate trouble in that last start, but that race came back so slow. And it's just a little concerning. I will say that horse showed a lot of guts, splitting horses, showed a lot of moxie and courage. And there's definitely a lot to like that you can't necessarily quantify on the page with Timberlake. But I think Awesome Road was my top pick. I'm going to try to get around Locked in that space. So that was some of my initial thoughts.
Mark?
Yeah, I think this race is really, really interesting, and it depends on what your take on Locked is. And we're going to cover a race at Santa Anita here in a little bit, where Todd Pletcher shipped a horse to California, I'm assuming so that he doesn't have to run that horse versus Locked. And so my take here is that Locked is probably very, very well meant in this spot. I would want most of my action going through him. Has a pedigree that should be able to stretch out and and handle this. I do like those horses that break their maiden going a mile, albeit the Saratoga mile is a very, very weird trip. So there's a little bit of an asterisk there, I would say, on anybody who does break it at Saratoga. But Time Form loved that last effort. The buyer came back for really big for him. I think he's the horse to be in this spot. And then beyond that, there's a few other price horses I like. Somebody's talking about one of them in chat. But Josh, where'd you land? And then we'll bounce around a little some other price stuff we like.
I had an existential crisis with this race because like Locke just looks like the horse, but whenever I see a horse like this drawn to the outside, right, 2-year-old stakes race, missed the break the first time out, which apparently has become just Todd Pletcher's MO, where he can't get a horse to break out of the gate. I don't know what changed in the last 3 years, but he broke last time, but it still looks like he got a little bit of a bump coming out and got hustled up and just kind of won on the front end. And this horse might just err. Does look like the on paper probably looks like the best horse. I think you got to make a decision here. If you like it, I think you single and move on. There are 2 other horses that I really like at huge prices. The one I think I feel the strongest about is the 5 West Saratoga, which I'm surprised Josh, Mark isn't on.
I first thing I am on the horse, but second thing, you saw Corrales and you just made it an A, didn't you? That's a 3-series special,
basically.
Right?
Okay. But no, isn't it strange that you have a horse that just won a grade 3 that's coming in to another, is making a logical progression from grade 3 as a 2-year-old to a grade 1, adding an extra half furlong, and they were making this horse 20 to 1 on the morning line. I understand the figure doesn't look that strong, at least on Brisnet. I know Bayer likes to cook their numbers, and they're like, oh, no, grade 3, let's add 7.
No, it doesn't look good on Bayer either.
Okay.
It looks a lot worse on Bayer than it does on Briss.
Okay. But I will say that this horse is coming in with really nice form, and looks like the horse is kind of just learned to win. I don't know. Broke its maiden at Ellis. It took a little bit to kind of get the light bulb to turn on, and then just turned right around at a nice price and won a grade 3. The speed figure might be a little weak, but sometimes sometimes you got to go with something else. Go with form here. You do get Gerardo, who was on the horse last time that you liked. Who was it? Awesome Road last time out. So I don't know what's up with that. I know Cox does like to ride Jerry in Kentucky, but I know I thought this horse was very interesting. We probably don't get 20 to 1. I'm guessing this is probably just a little bit of bad line, or I don't know. Maybe they, people just bet the buyer figure and just assume, oh, this horse can't do anything. But the other horse I did like a little bit was the 6 horse, Generous Tipper, just to the outside. Now, this is a horse that looks very nice on Brisnet. Is a horse that I think similar to the 5 horse I talked about, is kind of that light bulb horse, right? You ran first time out at Ellis on turf, didn't run that well. All of a sudden, hey, let's put this horse in a maiden on the dirt. Misses kind of the break, is a little slow, but closes his nice closing kick. And then next time out, just wires the field here. Was in that race with West Saratoga. Did beat another horse that's in here that won next time out as well. So, I think that this is just a logical step again for this horse here. Seems to be going through that progression that 2-year-olds go, and it seems to be pointing in the right direction. So I think with a little bit of a step forward, the 6 makes a bit of sense here. And if I recall, another reason why I kind of looked at those horses, if you look at this, I mean, you got an E6, you got an E8, you got an E6, you got an E8, you even got a P8, which you don't see very often. That to me makes me want to think that, hey, we want a horse coming from off the pace. And really, the only reason the reason I have such a hard time tossing Locked out is because, I think Jose is probably smart enough not to get into a pace duel. I've said that before and been wrong, but if he doesn't get into a pace duel, I think Locked, probably is going to sit a nice trip here. It's going to let the speeds go, because I think everyone else here knows that the only way you're going to beat him is if you get out and go. And I think you just have too much speed in here. So I looked at horses that I think could come from off the pace. I thought Generous Tipper fit in there from that race second time out, and I thought West Saratoga last time out, coming from off the pace, I thought might get a similar setup in here. So I really like the 5 and the 6 here. I don't know what I'm going to do with the 9, but I think that's obviously a super logical horse, and I'm not going to talk anybody off of just singling that horse.
Yeah, I was say Josh mentioned the 5. I thought the other horse, and I know Road Warrior likes this one as well, is the 1 horse, the Wine Steward, who I think is just super interesting in here. If you get anywhere near 8-1, this is an epically great play. This horse is 3 for 3 lifetime. Does something a lot of 2-year-olds take a very long time to figure out how to do, and that's past other horses, and has done so in all 3 starts. And if you look at the time for him off that last one, they get that horse a 101 off winning that funny side up at Saratoga. Going 6, and that is not that very far behind your other your top 2 choices in here. And these 2-year-olds are very prone to taking big steps forward in chunks, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if a maker trained horse takes a nice big step forward again and is an absolutely amazing player here. And I love a horse that likes to find the winner's circle. Those ones that like to do that kind of continue to do that. You're getting Sayers Up, who was on for the Bashford Manor race. I think it's the Wine Steward in here is an extremely interesting horse, and also the pedigree, both top and bottom, unlike some others in here, really sort of screams that a more classic distance trip. You got Vino Rosso on top with Tonner and Serve. You're talking about both classic distance winners, so a horse that should continue to stretch out and might be a really interesting player moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely took a long look at the Wine Steward. I think that's a horse I will use underneath. I actually really I like the horse El Grando, who he beat actually running in the Champagne this weekend as well, a little bit at 8-1 in that race. So interesting, both those horses actually have the same morning line in their respective Grade 1 step ups. But I think that's a good race. That was a really nice race actually at Saratoga. I remember watching that one and thinking those were 2 pretty well meant horses moving forward. So definitely makes a lot of sense. And Josh, I do have to say, I do actually quite like your 6 a little bit, Generous Tipper. I have a love-hate relationship with Ken McPeak, probably leans a little bit more towards the latter. But it is one of those relationships where, like, whenever I rely on him, he doesn't come through for me. And then when I am like, I'm tossing McPeak, then he just wins 6 in a row. And so that feels like a horse that I agree with you, has the light bulbs kind of, not that it was ever off, but it was like they finally figured out what the horse was meant to do and how to do it. And this horse is only going to get better, I think. And you're getting a really nice price on a horse that has not run its best race yet. And I think that's always a dangerous proposition in these types of 2-year-old races. Because here's the one thing, which is and this is, I think, a good example of this. And Josh, you highlighted it with all the E8s and E6s, etc. These horses, overwhelmingly 2-year-olds, when they get to these types of races, have had things go their own way in all of their races. And now what happens is you get a bunch of horses who've all gone to the lead, basically, because that's what you do with a great horse. You just let them go to the lead and keep them out of trouble, especially young horses a lot of times, when you're sprinting 6 furlongs, 7 furlongs, even doing a 1-turn mile. And they're not going to get the ideal trip anymore. Like, they're going to have issues. Not everybody can be on the lead. Horses are going to have to figure out whether they can pass other horses or not pass other horses, etc. So, to Mark's point, that's why I do like the Wine Steward. He can pass horses. You look at a horse like Generous Tipper. He's got a few different things. He can pass some horses, as you saw 2 back. He can also go to the lead and do. So he's versatile. I like that. So, I think you look at those types of horses. I think they make a lot of sense. If you're going to try to beat the 9, then you're going to have to spread pretty far, I think, in this race. But it's an intriguing one if you can get past the 9. But the 9 might also just be 5 lengths better than everybody else. So,
Anything else on this race? Nope. All right. Race 10. Turf Mile. Coolmore Turf Mile. Going a mile on the turf. $1 million purse. 3-year-olds and up. Your morning line favorite is the number 1 Master of the Seas at 2-1. Charles Appleby, James Doyle, Godolphin, winner of the Woodbine Mile by a pretty comfortable margin. I don't know. I think he looks tough in here. What do you think, Mark?
I think he looks very, very tough in here. I think Master of Seas. I think there's 2 horses I can make a case for in here that can win. One of them is Master of Seas, and the other horse is Up to the Mark. There's been an argument to be made that the Up to the Mark is the best turf horse in training in the United States right now, and Master of Seas is no slouch. This is not like, sometimes you get these C-tier Euros shipping over. This is a horse that, won at Ascot the race before. So a legit, talented horse. He travels very well. He's got wins in Maidan as well. So, my only concern with him is that, just the trip, the big field, obviously James Doyle is normally pretty good at inventing trips, but in case he runs into a wall of horses or has a problem, I think Up to the Mark is the other logical horse, and I think from the 2 of them to the rest of the field is a pretty big cliff. So I'll when I'm playing this from a pick 6 standpoint, I'll probably use them both equally. I realize that's the worst thing to do ever, and so our good friend Steven is like rolling over and like screaming right now. But yeah, and I really don't think I need anybody else in this field. I just think they're the 2 best horses in the race by a large amount.
I believe, dude, one of my sensor, you said Up to the Mark, and there was a sensor going crazy on my computer. There we go.
Really?
Yeah. I hate Up to the Mark in this spot. I wouldn't bet Up to the Mark with your money, Mark. And I would just like burn your money basically any way possible. So, yeah, I think Master of the Seas is like probably going to be just a single A and just move on. There is one horse in here that I am going to use probably as a B or C type, and it's a horse I tried to make a case for earlier this year. I may have almost also tried to make a case for it on the Naira Bets video, but then I quickly switched my mind. And that is the 9 horse.
Yeah, of course.
Annapolis. Now this is just, I know this is just absolutely setting alarm bells off on Matthew, because once again we got another Kentucky Downs horse, and he didn't really run much of a step in that race. Honestly, I'm really just going almost type like horse for course type thing here. He won this race last year. I know he came back after that and just, I just had, I don't know, it was a nightmare of a trip, broke dead last in the BC mile. But I'm hoping maybe getting back to Keeneland, maybe gets the horse back on the right path. Not that there's anything wrong with running second in grade 3 and a grade 1 to Casa Creed, who's I think is a better horse than Up to the Mark. But yeah, I don't know. I think Annapolis here is I don't know. I think that he's the other horse that I would want in this race, and I don't necessarily know if I actually want him or want him that much. But it's just kind of boring saying, "Hey, I like the chalk," and move on here a little bit. Just honestly, Mark, the thing that scares me the most about Up to the Mark is all of a sudden, right? This horse was going great, looked really good, and now he had some setback, and then now they already announced a stud deal for him. I'm like, dude, I'm waiting for them to freaking scratch this horse, and just not even run him in the spot because this horse is done. So I don't know. They're just those things just make me a little bit weary about it. I hope this horse takes all the money so I get a better price on the one. I'm also not like thrilled that his one kind of off race in the last 5 was here at Keeneland going a mile. Yes, he ran into Modern Games, but Chez Pierre, I mean, is that horse even still around? I don't even know. So I don't know, just not for me. I think that this is not a horse that I'm going to want to put your money on, Mark. So Matthew, where did you kind of land here?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Master of the Seas was, heads and shoulders the best. And now that said, I don't think that Woodbine Mile was a particularly good field. But then again, if you look at the fields that Up to the Mark beat, I mean, Spooky Channel, I mean, we're who are we talking about here? Like, it's not like, he beat a murderer's row of great horses necessarily. It speaks to kind of the dearth of great American turf horses to some extent, that are not maybe in Chad Brown's barn. And he really just has great fillies and mares at this point. So, it's interesting. I do think Masters of the Seas, gets the race and gets the right trip, has the inside rail. Those European horses always like being covered up. So that shouldn't be an issue. As Mark said, this is not a B-level horse. I mean, this is a horse that's finishing third in Group 1s overseas. I mean, this is a legit horse. And I think that, makes a lot of sense here. But that said, and maybe this is why you invite me on, while I agree with Mark, I also agree with you, Josh, that if you made me take a second horse, it's Annapolis. Because I actually like the fields Annapolis has gone up against before in the past a lot more, and going up against Casa Creed. And, we certainly talked about that 4-star Dave. And it's interesting. I remember, we all talked after that race. If you supported Casa Creed, Annapolis, or Ice Chocolat, you couldn't be upset with the results of that race. Those 3 horses ran their race, and they ran hellaciously good races, all 3 of them. And so, it was just, he ran up against a horse that loves Saratoga and loves that mile and just, couldn't get past. But Annapolis should sit a really useful trip in this spot. And, it should be pretty forwardly placed, and it'll be interesting to see how the turf course plays. But if you think maybe Master of the Sea gets into a little too much trouble, this is a horse that, with Flavian Bradabord, might make a lot of sense as an alternative. But I'm with you on Up to the Mark. That something struck me because I really like that horse. You guys know I was really on that horse on Kentucky Derby Day. I really like that horse on Belmont Day. So I do like that horse quite a bit. But Josh, like you, I was a little spooked by the news of, we got a stud deal. And I'm like, you need a new alert. Just wants to be a dad. It might just be like one of those situations. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the Up to the Mark thing is, I don't think they got their stud deal. I don't think Todd is running this horse to say he got a start in this race or anything else. I think this is a shot. Okay, if he runs well here, we'll run him in the Breeders' Cup Turf Mile. Breeders' Cup Mile. My bad. And and if he throws a clunker, he probably gets retired immediately. So. Josh.
I know JJ's not even in here, but you're still,
yeah. He's not even here. No, but I would say there was one horse I was a little interested in, and another one of these Kentucky Downs run back horses, and that's the number 3 Stitched. Stitched, I'm shocked that Josh isn't gushing over because he's got to be an E8, right? Only
EP6.
Ooh, okay. But no, Stitched should be controlling speed in this race. If you look at his last race at Kentucky Downs, first off, the layoff, you know, I mean, I realize it wasn't a long layoff. He threw the best race of his career by like 10 points in time for him. So maybe he's a horse that just really liked Kentucky Downs, or maybe he's a horse that, you know, is kind of ready to take that next little step forward of his 4-year-old campaign. He's been good at times. I think he's controlling pace here. If Benji Hernandez can break out, get on the lead, maybe slow this pace down, and you know, everybody else has to kind of close into it. I thought he was kind of a really interesting, you know, really interesting price horse in here. I don't know if he's good enough to win, but you know, he definitely is going to control the pace complexion, and I could see him holding on for a second or a third at a big price.
I will say that if you do trust optics, you do have to like up to the mark here a bit. He, you know, sits, I think, in the right spot. They have this as a pretty high speed rate, and that generally tends to favor, you know, off the pace type horses, and that's kind of where up to the mark is sitting here.
I got to ask Mr. Optics, because nobody's talked about the horse. I see a nice Q1 square there.
Dude, I can't keep on betting a tone. I cannot keep on betting a tone, because you know what? A tone, dude, a tone is, you know what a tone's like I'm not a car guy, but I think a tone's like a BMW, right? I mean, looks nice, right? Probably is like great to drive, but man, like, is it just like not a reliable car? Like this thing just like not as good as it looks on the outside. And yeah, I don't know, man. A tone every time. I swear, I wish I could. I might, maybe I'll ask Emily if she can like run a search for like a tone's like last 5 races and where he plots out, because every single time that dude is like a lone Q1 square and I can't get him home. So I've been chasing the tone for a while. So of course this is the time he beats me. But yeah,
what's interesting is a tone is, and it's funny, I have a relationship with that horse too. He is a great stable duel horse in that when he is at a high price, like 12 to 1, 10 to 1, and he doesn't cost you much money on the morning line, he runs like third, runs second, gets you points, right? You know, it helps you rack up points as a long jump. It never wins, but gives you, you know, from a stable duel perspective, is a very useful horse. But he's also a horse where, Josh, to your point, like it feels like every time he gets bet, he doesn't run as well as he should. And then when he's at a bigger odds, he runs better than is expected. And it's just, it's very Jekyll and Hyde with him, I think.
Yeah, I you know, after he won that the Pegasus World Cup turf, I was like, man, Maker's got a nice one here. You know, 6 years old, he's gonna have a nice, you know, this should be like his like peak year, right? And then we'll see. But like, it's like he won that race and that was it. Like that's where the drop off started. He hasn't really put together any other good races this year besides that Pegasus. And I mean, hell, last year in this race he was like 46 to 1. And now he's 10 to 1 on the line, and he's like not done anything. So, which is, I don't know, just kind of crazy. Yeah, I just can't with a tone. So, congratulations to the winner of the Turf Mile, a tone. He's gonna win at like 12 to 1, and you know, I'll have my shock Pikachu face on. Anything else in this race?
I'm surprised you didn't want to talk about the winner of the Arlington Million.
Who won the Arlington Million?
That piece.
Dude, okay. Look, there are very few horses.
I just wanted to get you upset about the Arlington Million being
being
named after Arlington, Virginia, which is where the race takes place now. So
dude. I'll tell you, man. You know what? If there's a horse I hate more than set piece, I don't know who it is. I just do not like set piece, and like he is the type of horse that like when I finally start to like, I'm like, all right, well, set piece is at 13 to 1. Sure, I'll take a shot. No, he runs 4th. And then it's like, oh, I'm not going to bet set piece at 3 to 5. Oh, knocked out of the pick 5. It's just, this horse just absolutely drives me nuts. And that Arlington Million was literally the icing on the cake. That that sent me to the moon. Because I think I had Adamo, and I know I had Adamo. I forgot who else I had in that race. And I'm just like, of course it's set piece. Like, it couldn't have been any other horse in that race. But I don't know. Isn't this a little too sharp for him Although he has won at a mile, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little too short. I mean, he'll get more speed to run into, which he should like. But I agree with you. I think he needs a little bit more time to mow him down. So
I think he clunks up for third or fourth. I think he's one of those horses that never fires big consecutive races. He ran huge in the Arlington Million. That's probably the best race of his career as a 7-year-old, and I expect him to either bounce or need a race. But I clunking up for third or fourth, yeah, totally. That's
Wasn't
what
that also the
that's
first
what
time
Seppies does.
Wasn't that also the first time he ran 10 furlongs?
I think so. Yes,
they've been running him shorter, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. It looks like it. Yeah.
Dude, I like why Matthew? Like I was having a nice night, right? I was just just hanging out, trying to avoid stress here, and no, I'm getting all worked up over set piece. Thanks, Churchill Downs. All right, let's move on to the Santa Anita legs here. We'll start with race 3 here, the Chandelier, going a mile and 16th for 2-year-old fillies here, and this. This race is another one where I kind of landed on one of the short prices, and I landed on the Baffert. I landed on the 7 Dua here, and this kind of goes against one of my rules, which is when Baffert has a horse and just runs a clunker, like you do not bet him back, because generally once the Baffert starts going the wrong way, like. It's very rare that I feel like he gets it back on the right course and starts going the right way. I mean, maybe, what was that horse? Arabian, I forget if it's Lion or Knight. Maybe
Arabian Lion.
Yeah. He looked like garbage at the beginning of the year, and he seemed to kind of figure it out here going on. But, I don't know. I'm going to give Dua another shot here. I have it as a single. And, I kind of backed it up here with the optics plot. When I looked at this race, sorry, I got to scroll a long way. Looks to be the speed in this race. And that's including that kind of clunker of a race that she ran in the Sorrento. JJ stays up. JJ basically, maybe he's just doing Baffert a solid in this spot. But generally he could basically get whatever mount he wants there, and unless he's just staying on because he's Baffert's boy. Horse has been working well. Has got a nice 6 furlong bullet, which is a Baffert move if I've ever seen one. So I don't know. I think this horse is going to be prime. I think this horse is going to break, and I think this horse might just go wire to wire. And kind of looking at some of these other horses, I just don't know if there's really any speed. I mean, like if you kind of look through this race, none of these horses have won going wire to wire. A lot of these have run from off pace. A lot of these haven't even won. Maybe a horse like the 5 Autumn Chill, is a little interesting. Kind of going on the flip side, a horse that has passed horses and won. So it hasn't just passed tired horses, it has passed other horses, and put in a winning effort and won impressively. So the 5 might be, maybe a B type horse in here. But yeah, I think Dua is all I need in this race. I'll let the chips fall where they may. Matt, where did you kind of land?
Yeah, it's not the most rousing renewal of the Chandelier. There's not, and I think to some extent she's even more conspicuous with her absence is Tamara, who of course blew everybody out in the Del Mar debutante and beat those fields. So when you see those huge margins of defeat for a lot of these horses last time out, it's because she ran up the score. And Richard Mandela is doing what Richard Mandela does, which is be very careful with his horses. So I think it's interesting that you come back here. I was a little worried about Dua for the reason you outlined, which is when Baffert horses go wrong, they typically continue to go wrong, and it usually isn't like a one race correction. I am puzzled by who will necessarily be there on the front end. The pedigree would suggest this horse would like getting 2 turns. I think the dam has produced 30% dirt route winners. Obviously, you have Arrogate up top. We've seen what that horse can do as a sire, obviously, with Arcangelo this year. So there's a lot to like there. I am interested in the number 8. This is a horse actually used underneath last time out and ran up for second. Laurent, is a horse that can pass other horses, is getting the blinkers added, which might ensure that this horse is a little bit more mid-pack rather than trying to close from the back like it has in the past. But the problem is I don't like the price on that horse at all. I don't like 5-2 on a horse that is going to need to come from that far off the pace potentially and is getting an equipment change for Peter Urton. So, it's one of those races where I kind of begrudgingly ended up on a horse that I don't know if any of you even like one slightest bit, but I ended up on the number 2 Scalable for Todd Pletcher as my top pick, which is a choice because this is a horse that finished 5th last time out in his only race. It's interesting, and Mark, it goes to a horse we'll talk about later, that Pletcher decides to ship this horse out to California. This is just not a move Pletcher does almost ever. And you have to assume it's trying to avoid horses here in New York, trying to avoid certain horses, potentially down in Keeneland. But there's clearly intent or the thought that this horse has talent to send this horse out to this race. Mike Smith and Todd Pletcher 0 for 7 over the last 5 years when they team up. So not exactly a high sample size or a significant statistic. But I really like this maiden race that this horse came out of. We saw Caitlin, her greatness, come back to win next time out. I am particularly high on Alpine Princess in the Alcibiades tomorrow. So I haven't maybe after Friday, my opinion of Scalable will change significantly if Alpine Princess turns in a dud of a race. But I just thought at 5-1 and 5-1 for a horse that's a maiden coming off a 5th place effort is not exactly great value. But I just could not talk myself into the Baffert horse. So, but I everywhere else I turned, I wasn't really overwhelmed with other options. So this feels like a very spready race. I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is from a horizontal sequence, I would spread pretty wide. Mark, where did you end up in this one?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm kind of shocked in here because I had 3 horses I liked, and you guys have only mentioned one of them, which is kind of blowing my mind, quite honestly. I want no part of Dua. I really I don't like these Bafferts when they start going south. There seemed to be no excuse in the Sorrento. Like I didn't see anything. I haven't heard any news come out. Normally, when these Baffert horses that are supposedly, there was a lot of steam around her going into that race, and normally when that happens and they have a bad race, Baffert leaks something. You hear that, she grabbed a quarter, she had a shoe problem, fractures in the gate. It's just something. There was nothing. I've heard absolutely nothing. So she probably takes a ton of money in here, and I am very prone to going other places. Matt mentioned Laurent. That's one of the horses that I am interested in. I don't necessarily know if she really wants to go this far. That's my real main question with her. Practical Joke on top, Trap Shot on the bottom end. She may end up being a 1-turn horse as she grows a little older. But oftentimes you see with these 2-year-olds, they just even if they don't, this isn't what they want to do. They have so much talent that they can win. They can win races. The other 2 horses, well, Josh is, working on his Etch-a-Sketch skills here, that I'm very interested in are, first off, the 1-horse Chattelus from Mark Glatt, horse that has pedigree top and bottom that says that this distance should be what she really wants to do. We've seen all these gun runners who it seems like basically everything he sired has been phenomenally talented. This is a horse that had a bit of a rough trip last out. Another horse that does have some speed. And, I know Josh thinks Dua is going to get loose. I really think Chattelus is probably going to keep Dua quite a bit of company on the front end. And I think Chattelus is the kind of horse that might be likely to stick around late. Yeah, of course Juan is riding for, Baffert. Look at the percentage they are together. The other thing I would say, I didn't mention,
isn't Antonio Frezu, doesn't he have a suspension?
Not for stakes races. So the other thing I would mention about Baffert right now is that Baffert's barn is, we've been talking about Dua. Baffert's barn's a little bit cold. He's 1 for 14 on the meet right now, only firing at 7%. I realize he's had a bunch of horses in the money, and maybe you can attribute that just to racing luck, but I always remember when they moved to Santa Anita, Baffert wins at about 35% for the first month. It seems like he's, just absolutely fires. So get another reason to kind of fade Dua. I realize I'm going in circles. So the one last horse that I was a bit interested in was Gate to Paradise. I know the 6 horse, another horse that I think stretches out really well. Air Gates have been very talented. Again, I am picking a maiden in here going versus winners, but this is one that I think does stretch out, and I find it pretty interesting. Kent had a win last out on Autumn Chill, and he hops over to Gate to Paradise, and I'm assuming he had choice, and was not forced off. So
and
Kent pays the rent.
Yeah, it's past the first of the month, so
it's past the first of the month. Rent's got to be due. So, no, I think Gate to Paradise is a pretty interesting player in this race as well. So, my ticket will have a. I'm going to be pretty spready. This is probably the spreadiest race in the sequence. I think this is prone to get a price, but my top 3 are the 1, the 6, and the 8.
I did have to mention the Chattelis. Indian Charlie on the bottom, and I was told never trust anything that is written in Indian Charlie, so I can't trust this horse. Right? Isn't that little like parody? Isn't that the little parody thing, Indian Charlie? No, am I making that up?
I got nothing, Josh.
I got nothing.
Okay,
absolutely nothing.
Maybe some of the boomers in chat will help me out. Charles likes Laurent here. So because Charles likes it, maybe I believe a little bit more. Mark, I will have to say I would bet do it with your money. So if you do want to PayPal me, I will make that bet. I do think that this is a if 2/3 of this field wins this race, I wouldn't be like surprised. I'm not going to be shocked. I really just, I don't know. I kind of felt like I needed to make a stand in this race, especially if I did like this horse. I kind of saw it and I kind of, like I said, I started and stopped it here. I did think Autumn Chill was a bit interesting in this spot as kind of maybe a C type. But yeah.
And it also shows you, I think, how, outside of maybe Tamara and, but it shows you really outside Tamara, I guess, on the West Coast, it shows you just how dominated this juvenile fillies crop is with New York, Kentucky talent. Bright work, ways and means. These are the horses that you're going to really want to pay attention to come Breeders' Cup time, because this field, unless somebody makes a considerable jump, it is just not really all that inspiring.
Yeah, no, I very much agree with that. I think we see this ebb and flow. There's some years the California horses are very strong. Yep. This just does not seem to be one of those years.
It's really funny. Just one last point. There's been times where, and you see this happen often, especially like midweek, where you look and you see Mike Smith has got one mount. And you look at the horse and you're like, what? Why is he riding this horse? And then the horse just goes ahead and wins by 2 lengths, and you're like, oh, wow, he just won at 6-1, and I thought this horse should have been 20-1. And so for this, when I saw Mike Smith's name, I'm like, oh, how many mounts does he have? And so I went back, I looked at the index here, and I don't think that's the case here, because this man's riding basically every single race.
Yeah.
So there was something funny, like when I think it might have been one of the later races, I saw Mike Smith on a horse that kind of looked a little fishy, and I was like, why is Mike Smith riding this horse? But he's got a full card here. So anything else on this race? I think it's gonna be a fun race. I'm interested to see where it goes, and hopefully Baffert wins. Because he really needs a win right now. He's just taking L's left and right. So, no. All right. We'll move on. Mile and a quarter here, Hillside Turf. Rodeo Drive. Grade 2 here for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. And this was a race. This was the race that we were talking about at the last minute, and I was kind of, I was asking Mark kind of where he landed on here because I had a really tough time with this race. Your 9-5 favorite is the 6 Didia. Matthew, where did you kind of land here?
So you guys know this because I know I've talked to you about this before. I mean, I've been stumping for Didia for quite a while. I've liked this horse going back to the fairgrounds, going back to Colonial Downs last year. I mean, this was a horse I've always been really high on. I thought that effort last time out was actually incredibly impressive because it was a very heavily speed favoring course that day. Market segmentation got out on the front end, was able to set the fractions, and Didia, I thought, really represented herself extraordinarily well, beating McCulloch and Warlike Goddess in that field as well. So I thought that was a really good effort. It's always interesting to see how East Coast horses handle going to the West Coast. It's not the same concern I have over West Coast horses coming east on the turf, but it's just interesting to see how they handle it because it is a different type of turf. But one of the things about her is she travels, man. She turns in her A game wherever she goes. Whether it's in Argentina, Colonial Downs, Fairgrounds, Belmont, she's going to, Saratoga, she's going to run a race. She looks really tough. The horse that I am interested in, though, a little bit, if you're going to try to get past Didia and you're going to try to get past the number 2 as well, maybe Turner Loose gets loose on the front end because there's really no other front end horses in this race at all. And could she just kind of get out there in the front and set her own fractions and be able to hold people off 6-1 on the morning line? I don't know. I was surprised that I thought for sure there'd be some other nominal speed in this race. And there really wasn't anything jumping off the page at me. And I thought, we've seen that Santa Anita turf course favor speed sometimes. And I just thought, could you get the right trip and the right setup in that space? So those were kind of my thoughts. I mean, I'm going to be using Didia in a lot of my picks and my sequences here, but I do think the 1 is maybe a little bit interesting at a price. And I think the 3 is also kind of a little bit of an interesting horse that I'll probably be using underneath in juncture.
This was the race. This was the race where I saw Mike Smith on that 3, and my interest peaked because I'm like, what in the world is Mike Smith doing on this horse? And I was kind of going back and forth a little bit. I'm like, am I going to use this horse? Am I not going to use this horse? Looks a little slow, but Mike Smith, not necessarily a great, known as a great turf jock, but I will say there's one type of horse that I think Mike Smith has had success on the turf, at least, and especially lately. Like maybe the last year or two. I don't know at his age, like why all of a sudden this is happening, but if he's got a 1-run closer on the turf, like he just knows. Right. And maybe it's just all the years of experience, right? And the fact that he's got timing, but I don't know. Like I feel like he can ride those one run closers on the turf pretty decently well. And I think that's the way to go here for the 3 juncture. Mark, where did you kind of land?
So you're taking juncture is that Corrales couldn't win on her at Ellis. Now they're going to ship her to Santa Anita into a G2, and Mike Smith's going to get up on her on turf and win. Got it. I'm making sure the Josh logic clicked in my brain. No, I mean I couldn't agree with Matt more. He might as well have read my notes.
Who also like juncture, FYI.
You can both be wrong about that one.
Easy does it.
I think Didia is a lone A for me. She, obviously she's won 4 or 5 in the States, and then was a win machine down in Argentina as well. Very, very talented horse, and she can do anything. She can kind of handle any surface. Don't really just need to say much about her. She's just very talented, and I think she had some pretty legit excuses in that New York. The only thing that the only question mark is why haven't we seen her since the beginning of June? She didn't run at Saratoga. She didn't, there were other places she sort of could have shown up, and they chose not to. They didn't run her at Kentucky Downs or anything. So I don't know if it's Cornelius, or not, sorry, Ignacio.
Yeah,
I can't say
Correas. Yeah.
Correas, yeah. Just being extremely careful because this is the best horse in his barn by a mile and a half.
Yeah.
With her, and maybe something small came up, but no, I mean she's a war horse. She's traveled and she just kind of runs her race. I know Josh stepped away for a second, so you won't get to see the form. But the other horse that I was a little bit interested in here, and again, I'm sort of surprised no one.
I will say, Mark, just very quickly, just to say, she's been working consistently this whole time. Like, if you look, she's not had a break in terms of the works. So I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't know if they've just been waiting for the right spot. Beats me. But I think it's to your point. Correas is just dealing with this with kids' gloves because he knows what he's got.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, she's also been working locally, which is very nice to see. She's been here for an extended period of time. Looks like she spent the whole summer here. So maybe this was a planned break all along. They wanted to have that early spring campaign, and then they wanted to point her towards the Breeders' Cup in the fall. I don't know, but the only other horse that I was a little bit interested in here is the 2-horse Anisette, who is. I think second choice on the board, is perfect in the state since coming over, and ran that fairly nice novice race at Wolverhampton on the 10th. So fairly talented horse. Rispoli has been up for 2 of those, so he clearly knows what he has here. And she's another type in here. Obviously it's the 3-year-old running versus predominantly older in this field. She's definitely taking a step up in company, but I think she's she should be a pretty major player in here as well. She's sort of probably my lone B, but I think in this pick 6 sequence, this is the race that I was the most comfortable getting skinny in because I think Didier really kind of towers over this field.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way, and I feel the same way about the 2 as well, which is I think she's going to run up for something. My concern is kind of what I talked about with Turner Loose being loose on the lead. She's not going to get a very fast pace to run into, and she's a deep closer, and so that's my concern is I don't think she gets there, and that's the other reason I like Didia. Honestly, you look at the optics plot, Didia is going to be forwardly placed, and then she's a great closer on top of that. I mean, she's got the setup. I mean, this is I think a single in the sequence. If you're playing a pick 6, you got to have at least 1, probably 2, and so if you're going to put together an affordable ticket, and so. She's my single in this one.
Do you think she goes off favored?
Yes, by a ton. Yeah. I think she ends up 6-5, 7-5 range, probably something like that.
I was going to say 7-5. Yeah, 7-5.
You don't think the local horse, the 2 takes more money?
I think they'll be close. I think you're going to have sort of a 7-5, and I think probably 2-1 are going to be your top 2 choices, and then I think there's going to be a pretty big gap to anybody else.
Okay. Yeah, I was a little obviously I looked at the optics plot, I looked at the PPs, I liked Didia. I didn't like the price, and I feel like we've been lucky, Matt, because I've also really liked the horse in spot, and I liked her in that New York Stakes as well. I think she was my top pick in that race, and market segmentation had it all her own way there. But I feel like you've gotten maybe a better than expected price on Didia due to the connections. Obviously, not Nacho Correas. I mean, people kind of know him, especially in the Midwest. But you get Vincent Cheminot, who kind of came out hot when he kind of came over to the U.S. and watching him ride at Indiana or Horseshoe Indianapolis, excuse me. He doesn't really. Give me a whole lot of confidence all the time. I know Uncle Sully's been waiting for me to say something about jockeys. I think he's fine, but I just, God bless Nacho for being so faithful and loyal and keeping him on here, because I think basically anybody would have taken them out. So. But I think Didia makes a ton of sense in here. I did like the 3 juncture a little bit. Closing Remarks, I think, is an interesting horse. Every once in a while just comes in and just runs a really, really nice race, and seems to get bet a lot over here. And so I'm kind of surprised that he's 4-1 on the morning line here. Yeah, Uncle Sully's saying he's fine. But I don't know. I thought I was trying to make a case here for closing remarks. It's only run once at the distance. And I don't know if there's necessarily going to be enough pace in here for him, but maybe one to watch for underneath. But yeah, I think I just need the 3 here and probably Didia. And I'll probably just use both of those horses and try to get past with these. I wasn't really interested in the 2 horse. I was a little bit, but like if I'm gonna take a shot between the 2 and the 6, I'm gonna take Didia, and I'm not gonna take the two chalks in this race. So kind of AB it here with a short price and a little bit of a longer price in this race.
So I will say something, Josh. It's one of those things. I realize you don't like chalk, but and you're frustrated with the price you're going to get on Didia, or Didia, however you want to say it. But the fact of the matter is, to pick 6, and sometimes you just stay alive and you take the logical things where they are. So,
or hear me out, right? You go 5 of 6,
or you go 5 of 6, tossing the
and
favorite,
you leave off the
6
to 5 favorite because you were trying to get cute.
So Caleb's not here, and you're going to Caleb this. Excellent. I love it.
I thought you were going to do what's like the video that's like kind of a bit of a meme. I was like, or you could go fuck yourself, and we could or hear me out.
Anything else on that race?
Nope.
No. Race 9. I'm going to close this out. The American Pharoah for 2-year-olds, mile and 16th here on the dirt. You got the even money favorite, Bob Baffert, sending Muth out here. Finished second in the best pal last time out. $2 million purchase. Is even money here. And I think, so, I kind of went through this race, and I think the fact that I have so many question marks all over the place, this might be a spread race for me, even with an even money horse in this race. Mark's hate for Bob Baffert knows no bounds, so I'm sure he's not using Muth. So where did you kind of go, Mark?
Yeah, I think the race begins and ends at what you think of Muth. Obviously, they paid $2 million for the horse. Expectations were really high. If somebody could explain to me what happened in the best pal, I'd love to know, because Muth was, 50 cents in the dollar, and was supposed to run off the paper, or run off the track, sprint wings at the quarter pole or something. And that was just disappointing. He just kind of couldn't get it done. Didn't look like he, he just looked flat in the lane. I don't necessarily know if what happened there. The figure came back really stout. I mean, he can't get a 112 time form for that. He makes all the sense, but that last race just can't, especially when you're taking a real short price, similar to the other Baffert, in the third race. It makes you really, really skeptical. So I kind of went and did a little fishing elsewhere. And the horse I think I landed on as my top choice is the 6 horse BU, who I know is a maiden, and I'm quite fine with that. We had this thing we were talking about, this Pletcher horse that, Todd Pletcher does not ship horses across the country just willy-nilly. It's not something he does. He's not, I think I pulled up the stat, and in the past 5 years, he's had 20 starters in California total. And that does not include Breeders' Cup races, but that was just 20 total starters, which is, when you look at the size of somebody like Todd Pletcher's barn, that's a very, very low number. Both of the horses he shipped out are Rapole horses, but my take is that he's got a pretty loaded barn full of 2-year-olds. He's got horses running in Naira, he's got horses running in Keeneland, and he wants all these win-in-your-ends that he can get. So he is shipping a horse out to California that may be very live. BU has a pedigree that, Curlin over Congrats at the bottom end, horse that should be able to stretch out without any problems. paid a lot for this one. They obviously, intentions were really, really there. And I think that Hopeful, we don't really know what that race was as of yet. The figure on the winner came back very, 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 very low. The entire front end, who BU was a part of, came off that race. That race completely imploded, and Nutella Fella came rolling down the middle of the track and nailed everybody at some absurd price. Was very good for me that day, not good for most of the rest of the people. But, I sort of wonder if you draw a little bit of a line through that Hopeful. Yeah, this is still a maiden, but Todd obviously thinks this one's pretty talented to ship him across the country. So I think BU's is a pretty major player in here. Still don't know what to do with Muth. Let Matt talk about what he thinks in here, because I had some other horses I was a little interested in at some prices.
Yeah, so I like Mark, I have a fair amount of skepticism over Muth, and like Josh, I think this is a very spready race. I don't. My concern with Muth is a couple. One, the quite frankly phony excuse that came up by Baffert for removing that horse from the Hopeful the day of the race was ridiculous.
The poster or something. Yeah.
The race came up stronger than we thought, and don't know if I like the post draw, which is what he said about the one mare that he had as well, and it was just ridiculous, and it just struck me as untrue, and I don't know. I don't know if Bob even thinks he has a very good horse. It's funny. I think Pletcher has found himself with this kind of abundance of 2-year-olds. Cox seems to always have now great 2-year-olds. And Baffert seems maybe the cupboard is a little more bare than we thought it was, because I remember there was a lot of buzz about his 2-year-old crop this year and how he was going to come, it was going to be this huge reckoning because he wasn't, now he's going to be banned from the Kentucky Derby again. I don't know. Prince of Monaco regressed significantly the next time out from a buyer speed figure standpoint, and certainly did not look like a world beater, barely beating Miramati, who I think is an okay horse, but not a great horse, the next time out. So I don't know. Even money, I want no part of that horse. BU is an interesting horse. It was a horse I was really excited about in his debut effort. There was a lot of buzz on the track about that horse, I will say. You talk to people on the backside. Yep. A lot of people said, this is a horse you need to watch out for. This is a horse you really got to pay attention to. What I saw in that maiden was a little concerning, which was I thought that horse had every single right at the top of the stretch to get past Just Steel and just didn't do it. And I looked like a horse that liked to run with his friends rather than running past his friends. And that concerned me. And then it came back with a meh effort in a very slow, but to your point, Mark, we don't know how much people might rebound from that Hopeful. And I think they will, because there's no way that's the norm for these horses. I think that, looking back a year from now, we're going to be drawing lines through that effort overwhelmingly. I think even come Breeders' Cup time, we might be doing that. Mm-hmm. The horse that I'm a little interested in, and I also think it is interesting that Bob has the other overwhelming speed horse in this race, the number 4, Wind Me Up. And so I do wonder how much the 4 runs interference for Muth and just kind of like boxes everybody out so that Muth doesn't get any pace pressure and can just kind of saunter around on the front end and they set slow fractions. So that's
my favorite sire commercial going right now.
Oh, Vino Rosso?
Oh, Vino Rosso! I love that call. I'm sorry. I will not apologize for my love of oh my god, why am I blanking on his name? Oh yeah, Mark had to leave because he does not like oh my god. What the heck? What's the announcer's name?
Who? Colmus?
Yeah, Colmus. Larry Colmus. Thank you. Dude, I'm just I'm like a not all there. It's been a crazy week. So yeah, but sorry to interrupt there. Go.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I will say, when you bring up those siren commercials, I knew someone who one time was watching one of the siren commercials, and she looked at me and she said, "Are they trying to get us to want to have sex with the horse?" And I was like, "Well, kind of." I was like, in a way, like they kind of are. And I was like, but she's like, there's just like tail swishing and everything's in slow motion and the mane's waving. She's like, it's how you would like record the beginning of Baywatch. And I was like, a little bit.
Chase
but
and I actually had this unhealthy obsession with the Star Guitar ad, right? And they had that song "Coming On Strong" or whatever, like that would play. And I remember there was like a period of time where like Chase and I would just message back and forth, just "coming on strong" for no reason. And there was actually a race in New York.
At
It was
Saratoga, Dwayne Lucas trained horse that was a Star Guitar, and you guys did not bet it at some
no,
price.
Minute to Stardom. I bet
And
Minute to Stardom that won a race in New York, a stakes race, and I literally only bet it because it was a Star Guitar. Like it was just the dumbest thing, right? Like it was just firing $5 at it, like, and he like won it like 30-1 or something. It was something crazy. But all right, back to the race.
Yeah, back to the race. I do think. Listen, next level I think is a little bit interesting, but the horse that I kind of like is the number 5, Raging Torrent at 6-1. I think that horse is a little bit interesting with the additional blinkers for Doug O'Neill. I sometimes like equipment changes on horses like this that seem to be just kind of be running on a treadmill a lot of times and just kind of running in place. And I think the blinkers can add a little bit of oomph and a little bit of let's get past this horse. So like I said, I think that's where I'm probably going to use that horse a little bit, but I'm going to be spreading in this race. To be perfectly clear, I'm not going to be using Muth. I'm going to actually fade Muth, and I'll spread and use 3 or 4 other horses. I probably will end up using BU in some way. Raging Torrent. I think now I'm blanking, the 3 next level I'll use as well. So I'll use a few in this race. But Mark, Josh, are you planting your flag anywhere in this one other than Muth?
Yeah. So like, going through this race, I kind of share the same skepticism that you guys do. Like, I don't know what's more disappointing with a like a Bob Baffert type horse. Is it a horse that like comes really close and loses, and like you kind of don't know why he loses it, or is it a horse that just completely just runs off the track, like runs up the track, is just finishes tired 5th or something? Which one do you excuse more? And I think you made a good point that Prince of Monaco came back and just didn't really run all that. The figure, I think, didn't come back as fast, right? It came back a little bit regressed.
From a buyer speed figure standpoint, he regressed 16 points. He went from 103 to a 87. So
yeah, so so there's a little bit of skepticism there, right? Because then you have to figure that second place effort probably looks even worse. And maybe it looks a little bit worse. It's a little bit sneaky worse. So maybe people are still going to bet it because they might see, a high-ish figure still there for second. But that maybe that figure just it doesn't match up. I don't know. Or it could just be, hey, didn't like Del Mar, right? And he runs back to Santa Anita, right? Yeah. But you're gonna have to take a really, really short price to figure out if maybe he just needs to get back to Santa Anita. I tend to want to fade based off that. BU I wasn't super interested in because I saw kind of the same thing where you had a horse that ran really well first out, finished second by a nose to Just Steel, who's running in another stakes race, and none of us talked about him whatsoever in the race at Keeneland, and ran fourth in that hopeful. So I don't know.
Well, BU beat Locked first out, who is going to be even money at Keeneland.
I don't like Locked either now. That's still thank you, Mark.
I mean, my thing with these 2-year-old races, it's so hard to tell. They develop so much race to race, and playing the game. Well, three races back, such and such beat. So but that was 3 races ago. That was then. This is now. You want the horse of the now, not the horse of then. Sorry.
Yeah, the transitive property only works with older horses, where it's like A equals B equals C, therefore A equals C.
Therefore C.
With young horses, you can't do that. And you see, especially as they're trying new distances every single time out, it's not as if they're running back at 7 furlongs or they're running back at 6 furlongs. they're going a mile and a 16th now. They're, it's a totally different dynamic. So, changes race to race.
Yeah, and I will say, when I looked at this race and I see all these run styles here, it really makes me look at these last two here, the S1 and the P4. You're off the pace horses coming up in here. So I really did give a really, really close look, and I'll definitely be using these two horses in some way, the 7 and the 8. The 7 indispensable here for John Sadler. Finished third by 7 lengths in a maiden race last time out. For a sire that generally does well first off. But this is a very highly regarded horse. Was purchased for $825,000. John Sadler, he'll win first out, but he's very, very strong second out. If you look at the horse's workouts, the horse has been working increasingly better. So I definitely think this is a horse on the improve, and I expect an improvement second start. And I think he's going to get plenty of pace to run into. 20 to 1 on the morning line. I really like that. And then going just outside, El Magnifico is another horse who's shown a propensity to come from off the pace and has finished second twice. Second by a lot of lengths both times. But this might be just another one where, hey, maybe if he just gets a little bit more pace in here, maybe he's able to go ahead and close the gap on him. He didn't necessarily have super fast fractions that last time out, Del Mar, going 22 and 4, 46 and 4, that middle fraction especially. So I don't know. I thought these two horses were interesting. Just kind of an interesting way to go, where I think a lot of people are going to be leaning very heavily on that short price Baffert, and I don't know. I think pace wise, both the 7 and 8 make a bit of sense, but once again, it's tough. These are very lightly raced horses. These horses, indispensable, only got one race underneath him. So sometimes it is a little bit of a crapshoot, but I'll take my shot with the 7 and the 8, and we'll see where I end up in the rest of the ticket. I mean, maybe I'm skinny enough where I can do a mark and use a defensive B here on Muth. I'll alarm myself again, because that might be, but I don't know. This is a pretty tough race, I think. And we didn't even talk about the one. I don't think anyone talked about the one Rothschild, did they?
Nah.
I thought that race 2 back. I mean, on Brisnet, that race 2 back looks pretty decent. And the main breaker, I mean, I don't know what happened in Futurity. Maybe the horse didn't break or brush it looks like the note says brush the gate. But hey, Tim Yakteen's a new Baffert. I mean, he's getting the horses. They're not sending the Baffert, they're just sending them straight to Yakteen. They're cutting out the middleman. Yeah, I don't know. I thought this is a pretty tough race. I'm going to lean pretty heavily on the 78. Maybe I used the 2. I think if you want to try the other Baffert, I wouldn't talk anybody off the other Baffert. Ramon Vasquez is second up for Baffert, it seems like, as of late, and he's got a pretty decent win rate with him. So hey, maybe wind me up's a little live here. I don't know. Josh, this is the toughest. This is the toughest race of the sequence for me, at least. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Josh, on your 7 horse, I know you mentioned some things, so I pulled some stats. Sadler is 14% on debut. He's 21% maiden second timers. So oftentimes his horses do need to start. That horse for me was right on the A-B line. I'm not sure if that's going to be an A or a B. Of any horse in this field, has the best pedigree to handle this distance. And you have Constitutions who tend to fire really well early. So maybe there's a little bit of that Sadler needed to start, and you'll get some of that Constitution magic here. And the other thing that I found really interesting is you have that 30th of September, that 6 furlong bullet, 112 and 3, best of 10. So it seems as though this is a horse that had a start and then has taken a step forward in the morning off from that start. That is a very nice work, especially for a 2-year-old. So I really wonder if this is that horse that just needed to start, got things sorted out. I don't think Sadler, Sadler is somebody that I think spots his horses pretty darn well. He's a very high percentage trainer, and that's how you get to be a high percentage trainer. So I think this one's very well met. And if we're both talking about it, I don't think you get that 20-1.
Yeah, so my counterpoint to the Sadler stat is I also started looking up Sadler stats as it's so funny as Josh was talking about that horse, and I just saw Sadler's 0 for 7 over the last 5 years in 2-year-old graded stakes races. So there's that.
So you're saying he's due? He's
due. You tell me there's a chance. So he's got to have it.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I thought this was a tough race. I think there's a couple places you can go. And I think it often happens sometimes when you see a favorite that you don't like. Sometimes even just seeing that, like, just because you don't like the favorite, you still got to pick the horse that's actually going to win. So sometimes even just having that opinion makes some of these races kind of tough. Matthew, not to put you on the spot, but before we get off, I did have a friend had one request for you. He wanted to know what you thought about race 10 on Saturday at Aqueduct.
Yeah, so race 10, you told me this right before we got started, so I was taking a quick look over it as in between some different spots. Obviously the Chad and Irad horse, the number 10 Frat Pack is the justifiable morning line favorite. But I mean, 2-1 for a horse that hasn't won the last 2 times out at this level. The horse that's interesting to me is actually the Leah Giamatti horse, number 11 Ocean's Reserve. And part of the reason for it is, and I've said this before, 7 furlongs is a very unique distance. And it's a distance that not a lot of horses excel at. This horse has never missed the board at 7 furlongs and has 3 wins in 6 attempts. So to me, that's always a horse that I'm going to naturally gravitate to because I love seeing success at that distance. And it's very specific to 7 furlong races, but that was a horse that if it can overcome that outside post, which I don't think is a huge detriment in these types of races, but if you don't want to get tongue too far wide. I think at 8-1 on the morning line, it's an intriguing horse with Javi aboard.
And I do want to preface this, PJ, if you are watching it, I did not tell Matthew that you own part of that horse. So
that's hysterical.
Yeah, that's his horse. Yeah, he's in with Bonaventure Stables. Actually, PJ's I think you met him, Matthew, right? PJ.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So PJ, that's one of the horses he took us back to the backside to visit.
Awesome.
So so good luck to PJ.
Oh, well, now I'm definitely I might have to use that as my long shot of the day now, just to give a little shout out. So that's great.
Yeah. So so he's I'm sure he's going to be geeked when he sees this. He's a frequent viewer, just a really good guy. So shout out to PJ. But I think that's going to do it for us, Matthew. As usual, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course, guys.
Obviously, where can people find you?
So people can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace, but they can also find me if you open up your Naira Bets app or go to nairabets.com. All my content is up there on the site. I have daily long shots of the day selections. Right now, I think I have a $3.93 ROI on my top picks there, so we're doing pretty well. And thanks to Queen of the Mud last week, actually, getting home at like $22. That one helped the stats a little bit. But I also have like a lot of stuff doing race of the week, this week in racing. I do a lot of written work for Naira Bets and that. And not just about New York. So even if you don't follow New York that much, that's fine. My long shots of the day are all over the country. I got a lot of stuff up about Keeneland actually this week. Some fast facts about Keeneland's opening meet and some, obviously highlighting the Alcibiades as well and going to be giving out pick sequences. But the real thing that I'm excited about is later this month, we are officially launching Naira Bets YouTube. And we're going to be having our own Naira Bets YouTube channel. And we're going to have a ton of content on there, some evergreen content, but we're also going to have a lot of different content focusing on tracks across the country and across the world. A lot of stuff focused on the Breeders' Cup. And I want to use the Naira Bets YouTube channel as an opportunity to bring on people, honestly, like the two of you, as well as other, handicappers that I have a little, strong opinion of and a high opinion of, to talk about different races and to expose people to different ideas and different ways of looking at different tools. And, I hope to have people like Emily on to talk about optics plot. I hope to have people like David Aragona or Craig Milkowski on to, talk about, Timeform US and stuff like that. So, to get people comfortable with using different forms, people talking about Brisnet, whether it's you or Ed DeRosa or somebody like that. So, people who use those products. So, yeah, so we're going to have a lot of fun doing that, but you can find me there. And, so I always will make time for you guys. And we have timed this perfectly because my 17-year-old Jack Russell Terrier has just gotten up, which is typically a sign that I have to take her out to go to the bathroom now. So this is perfect timing, gentlemen.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for everyone in the chat. I know we were highlighting, I was trying to highlight stuff as we went. But I appreciate all you guys. I see Trish, Uncle Sully, Charles, Colin showing up last minute. Road Warrior was in here all night. PDT showed up a little bit. Russ. So thank you guys as always. We'll have I should have a video up next week with our friend Caitlin Free. We are going to be doing a video on physical handicapping. A lot of people have asked me about that. So we will. I'm going to ask her a couple of questions on what she looks for horses in the paddock and kind of get that up. Hopefully we'll have a video up this weekend quickly from Caleb, maybe highlighting a couple things in between his classes and various dates and whatever else a college kid does nowadays. But for Caleb, for Mark, I'm Josh. We will catch you guys later if I can find the video that